60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight, Zelenskyy has urged the UN to take action in Ukraine and put an end to alleged Russian atrocities.
It is the purpose of our organization. Its purpose is to maintain peace and make sure that peace is adhered to.
With the Ukrainian president also accusing France and Germany of appeasing Putin, are we doing enough here in the Western world? Well, Nigel Farage weighs in on that, as well as new government plans or reported plans to send illegal migrants arriving in the UK to Rwanda. That's all at 9:30. Plus, has the war on truth in Ukraine spotlighted attempts to silence free speech in the free world? I'll ask top columnist Mick Hume in Uncancelled at 10:40. Why are the left, who've gleefully willed GBNews to fail, so triggered by Channel 4 being forced to reckon with its blatant bias? I'll explain why everyone should celebrate the privatization of a broadcaster that's failed on its mission statement in my digest next. Then I'll get the thoughts of my superstar panel too. Tonight, the broadcaster and Loose Women star Carol McGiffin, the conservative commentator Calvin Robertson, and making her debut, the economist Miata Fanbula. Could Trump make a triumphant return to Twitter courtesy of its new majority shareholder, pro-free speech billionaire Elon Musk? Well, Darren Grimes explores in The Outsider at 9:45. And speaking of Trump, he's become the latest figure to wade into the growing row over biological sex.
And a party that's unwilling to admit that men and women are biologically different, in defiance of all scientific and human history, is a party that should not be anywhere near the levers of power in the United States of America.
I'll be joined by Jeri Shanteau, former swimmer for the US national team, who's ready to face the woke firing squad to defend women's sports. From trans athletes like Leah Thomas and Emily Bridges, she's here at 10:20. As Sturgeon's lot show they really have lost the plot.
Right, Betty, show us how far we can trust the Tories.
Does the SNP's bizarre new ad stoke hatred against the Tories? A Scottish Conservative MSP battles a former SNP councillor in what's sure to be a wild clash, as a regular Brit is forced to pay more than £2,000 for leaving his house in lockdown. Should all fines for COVID rule breakers now be rescinded? We'll debate at 10 p.m. And a calorie counts on restaurant menus, an example of the Nanny state on speed. That and more coming up in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Don't forget to, I'll be bringing you a first look at tomorrow's newspapers throughout the show. And I'll crown today's greatest Briton and Union Jackass just before the night is out. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. Is Elon Musk now our only hope to secure genuine free speech online? The PayPal, Tesla and SpaceX entrepreneurs' purchase of 9% of Twitter shares and his immediate elevation to the board gives me a little bit of hope, actually. After all, just a fortnight ago, Musk was using the platform to lambaste it for failing to adhere to free speech principles and fundamentally undermining democracy. Musk must immediately reverse bans on high-profile figures axed for going against the woke orthodoxy, starting with the former US President Donald Trump. Now, Darren Grimes will have much more on this developing story later this hour. But next, my superstar panel are here. Let's have a first look at them. The columnist and media personality, Carol McGiffin. the Conservative commentator Kelvin Robinson, and here for the first time tonight, my old friend, the economist Miata Fanbula. But first, the news with Simon Pusey.
Hello, I am Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has appealed to Russian people to seek out the truth for themselves about Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. In a video message directed to the Russian population, Boris Johnson said they only needed an online VPN connection to gain access to independent information from around the world. It's after the mayor of the Ukrainian town Bucha has accused Russian troops of deliberately killing civilians during their month-long occupation of the town. The Kremlin denies the allegations.
Civilians massacred, shot dead with their hands tied, women raped in front of their young children, bodies crudely burned, dumped in mass graves or just left lying in the street. The reports are so shocking and so sickening, it's no wonder your government is seeking to hide them from you. Your president knows that if you could see what was happening, you would not support his war.
Ukraine's president has called for Nuremberg-style trials after accusing Russia of committing what he called the most terrible war crimes since World War II. Speaking via video link at the United Nations Security Council in New York, Volodymyr Zelenskyy warned of further Russian cruelty in other Ukrainian towns and villages. His comments followed United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres warning that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is one of the greatest challenges ever to international world order. President Zelenskyy described in detail the attacks across the country.
Russia wants to turn Ukrainians into silent slaves. We are dealing with a state that turns its veto at the UN Security Council into the right to cause death, which undermines the whole architecture of global security, which lets the evil remain unpunished and spread across the world.
Speaking in Poland, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says the UK will step up its sanctions against Russia.
This week we will announce that we've frozen over $350 billion of Putin's war chest, making over 60% of the regime's $604 billion foreign currency reserves unavailable. Our coordinated sanctions are pushing the Russian economy back to the Soviet era.
The UK, US and Australia have agreed to work together on hypersonic and anti-hypersonic weaponry. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, US President Joe Biden and Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison say it is all part of the AUKUS military pact that was announced last year. The three countries reiterated their unwavering commitment to an international system which they say respects human rights. And the D-Day veteran Harry Billinge has died at the age of 96. The former Royal Engineer was 18 years old when he was one of the first British soldiers to land on Gold Beach in 1994. He was one of only 4 survivors from his unit. He later fought in Caen and Falaise-Poquet in Normandy. His daughter, Sally Billinge Shanley, says some of his last words were love one another. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Oh, how the left wing in this country have been seriously triggered over the past 24 hours. And not about the likely war crimes committed in Ukraine, the spiralling cost of living crisis, or the growing attempts to erase biological women from society. No, they've reacted hysterically to the government pushing ahead with a long-held promise to sell Channel 4. I know. You and me own Channel 4. Can you believe it? How random and completely unnecessary. Channel 4, home to culturally enriching shows like Open House, The Great Sex Experiment and Naked Attraction, owned by taxpayers.
Deep in the English countryside is a unique retreat. Oh, wow. Where committed couples can open up their relationships.
It is our first time doing anything like this.
With the help of the retreat's liberated residents.
It's just natural to have sex with multiple people.
In this dating show, we go back to basics.
Are you ready?
Bring on.
And start where a good date often ends. Naked.
Such an arrangement might have made sense in the world of terrestrial television when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, looking to provide an edgy, daring and yes, politically neutral alternative to the BBC and ITV. But in the world of streaming, YouTube, podcasts and multi-channel telly, it's an insane and outdated anathema. So why are the left so triggered? Well, I'll tell you in a second. But let's just enjoy some of the crocodile tears for a moment, eh? Bitter Ramona, Alistair Campbell, was true to form. He tweeted, "The Channel 4 move is right out of the Orban playbook, and time to make it blatant. Part of their purpose is to wind up Liberals." And the disgraced former Labour MP, Claudia Webb, not sure we should listen to Claudia about anything, but she's written, "The government has just confirmed its intention to privatise Channel 4. This is not freedom or independence, it's the seedbed of fascism." And then there's Labour's Deputy Angela Rayner, who raged, "This is cultural vandalism from a government that's run out of ideas, run out of road, and has no interest in levelling up." Look, I tend to think if Rayner thinks you're doing something wrong, then Boris Johnson and Nadine Dorries are almost certainly on the right track. But look, the left are actually so triggered because over the past couple of decades, Channel 4 has morphed from what it was meant to have been under Thatcher and become a blatantly left-wing broadcaster. Its news service, until just a few weeks ago, fronted by the Tories' Jon Snow, is the most biased broadcaster in the country. But what's so dangerous is it operates under the ridiculous pretense of impartiality. Look, I'm not an impartial broadcaster. I don't pretend to be. You know what I think about everything I talk about, and you can judge what I have to say knowing where I come from. I'm proud that I'm honest about what I think, but have guests from across the spectrum to provide impartiality. But as a public service broadcaster owned by the government, Channel 4 has a responsibility to be impartial, not just act impartial, they must be impartial, and they have failed on every count. There are too many examples to mention because the left-wing bias is fused into every nook and cranny of Channel 4. But of course, some of the most high-profile include the station's most senior news executive for years and years, Dorothy Byrne, slamming Boris Johnson as a known liar and a coward, and scandalously, I think, comparing him to Vladimir Putin.
Here is what we all need to decide. What do we do when a known liar becomes our Prime Minister? And just this weekend, we read that the cowardy cats in the Tory party may stop junior ministers from going on to the Today programme. Boris Johnson has been proclaimed by Downing Street as the first social media PM. On taking office, he recorded a jolly statement, so much more fun than being grilled by Emily Maitlis or Jon Snow. It reminded me of something, and at first, I couldn't think what it was. And then it came to me. This great flag bearer for democracy, Vladimir Putin, who also likes to directly speak to the nation.
Oh, Dorothy, please. And during the 2019 election campaign, they replaced Boris with a melting block of ice during a debate about climate change.
Kept the invitations open to the leaders of the Conservative Party and the Brexit Party. They have not taken up their places yet. Instead, a reminder, the ice caps are melting as politicians around the globe fail to cut greenhouse gas emissions in time to stop rising temperatures.
This is the best, though. This is how this so-called impartial broadcaster marked the exit poll that election night in 2019 when they discovered Boris had won a landslide and would finally be able to deliver Brexit.
So, it's 10 o'clock. The voting has ended in this sudden Christmas general election. Has Boris Johnson pulled it off and secured a majority? Well, that's what the exit poll is saying. Boris Johnson has gambled and won. He has purged his party and still come out on top with a majority.
Gridlock over Brexit happening, barring a national emergency, in between now and the 31st of January, on the 31st of January.
And there we are. That is an absolutely extraordinary result.
I just watch that clip anytime I'm feeling down. Now, Channel 4 were told to move out of the London champagne socialist bubble. But, you know, they never properly relocated to Leeds, with most staff refusing to leave the capital altogether. Now, look, the left wing has gone mad over the past 24 hours. I've been accused of celebrating journalists losing their jobs since the announcement of this sale. What absolute baloney. If Channel 4 is as good as it says it is, then it will survive and actually thrive in the private sector. Though I have found all of this reaction slightly ironic, given how lefty journalists at Channel 4 openly celebrated when I lost my job, alongside hundreds of brilliant journalists back in 2011 when the News of the World shut. And it's these same hypocrites who have openly willed GBNews to fail from the off, expressing glee and delight with our little troubles at launch, and actively encouraging an ad boycott. But I repeat, Channel 4 should thrive as a commercial broadcaster competing in the market just as GBNews is doing. What has made absolutely zero sense was a government continuing to own a far-left tally channel masquerading as a public service broadcaster in 2022. But to respond now, my superstar panel, the columnist and media personality Carol McGiffin, the Conservative commentator Kelvin Robinson, and the economist Miata Fanbula. Carol McGiffin, is the government right to put Channel 4 up for sale?
Well, it's not getting a huge amount of money for it, apparently. I just can't see the reason for them owning it anymore. What is the point? And I think, you know, the way you describe, not describe, but expose the left for being so triggered over this means you're right. Like you said, but Nadine Dorries must be onto something. When you go through Twitter and you see all the people that are so ridiculously angry because they're literally losing their mouthpiece or one of their mouthpieces, it's absolutely delightful to watch. But what's a little bit disturbing about it is when you look on Twitter and see who these people are and look at the number of, and I hate looking at them and I hate knowing about it, but the number of likes, oh my God! It says all you need to know about Twitter, actually.
And being completely outside the real world.
Exactly, right outside the real world. So I don't care. Actually, I don't care, and I think the rest of the country doesn't care. Only those people who live in North London care where the Channel 4
And Calvin, what they seem so obsessed with is this idea that Channel 4 News must be able to continue to operate in the way that it does. Why, Calvin? Why are they so desperate for Channel 4 News to continue?
We know why, Dan, because the political bias at Channel 4 News is worse than any other news station. In fact, a majority of their senior journalists complained to ITN to say it's anti-Trump, it's anti-conservative, and it's anti-Brexit. You cannot be that disconnected from the people you're supposed to be talking to and representing and not expect any comeuppance from it. Now, for people like Paul Mason and Alistair Campbell to say this is straight out of the Orban playbook, yes, well, good. Mr. Orban understands his people. He's been elected for a fourth consecutive time with a third supermajority. Good. If we're taking lessons from him, that helps us.
Although, by the way, they are actually factually incorrect, because what Orban is trying to do is bring media back into government control, whereas what our government is actually saying is, we don't want to control this service, let's leave it to the private sector.
And look at the language they're using. Fascism, traitor to your country. This is extreme, hyperbolic nonsense. It's sensationalism for the sake of it.
Miata, you think I'm wrong about Channel 4, though?
Well, I think it feels like you're more triggered than the left, I'll be honest. And I think the characterisation of the left, I think, is sort of odd and wrong, because actually 82% of people...
Odd and wrong, you're right.
82% of people polled support Channel 4. They support the idea of a kind of public sector broadcast. And for me, I'm all about conversations about structure and ownership, but I don't understand the rationale for privatisation when you factor that no taxpayer money goes into Channel 4. It generated 75 million last year, about $1 billion contribution to the economy, 10,000 jobs, and critically, it's supporting a supply chain of small businesses, independent production companies. And for me, that's a huge asset. And I'm quite proud to own that.
I'm not.
I'd quite like to have some shares off the back of it, but that model works for me.
And I'll tell you why. I mean, I actually used to cover Channel 4 in my former life when I worked at Broadcast Magazine, which is the magazine specifically for the TV industry. And the problem is, Miata, you're completely right. They do fund all of these independent production companies. And guess who works at these independent production companies? Their mates. They are fellow champagne socialists, and all Channel 4 does is line the pockets of people who think the same as they do. So yes, they have made a lot of independent producers very, very rich for producing left-wing biased content. And I know that I will be criticised for saying that, but it is true. This idea that Channel 4 funds an independent production company industry is wrong, because they're not independent. They think just like everyone at Channel 4 thinks.
Well, I think when you employ 10,000 people, when your supply chain is much bigger, I just don't believe that they're all champagne socialists, as you put it like that. I think it's probably more diverse than that, and I think you're probably caricaturising it a little bit. But, you know, for me, the key, you haven't made a case to me for privatisation. You've made a case for maybe better regulation. If you say they're not impartial, that's the job of the regulator to ensure that. But what is the case for privatising? And for me,
the government should not own broadcast.
Well, but why not? Because actually, why would we not want a proposition that works in the public interest, that is doing the job of public service broadcast? My worry with a privatised model, it can work, but actually some of the net benefits that you'd expect from a public sector broadcaster, you might not get it. The sort of independence that you say they don't do, you might not get that.
It might be working in the public interest. When the vast majority of the voting public in this country voted for the Conservative Party, the vast majority of the voting public in this country voted for Brexit, and this is a channel that is avidly against both of those. So I believe in holding the government to account. We do that on here all the time. We're always criticising the government. But they go further. They attack. And you can't expect to keep attacking your paymasters.
It's a campaigning
or your ownership without
Channel 4 is a campaigning organisation.
And it's not what it was actually created for.
But when 82% of the public support it, and actually most of the public won't engage in some of the content...
Not many watch it, though.
Where's the poll, the 82%?
So there was a survey that was done looking at people who supported Channel 4 quite recently. I can't remember which organisation did it.
Continue to support Channel 4. It's not closing down.
So I haven't heard from a single one of you the rationale for...
Well, I'll tell you the government's rationale. I mean, my rationale is that I just don't think the government should own a blatantly left-wing broadcaster. Nadine
Do you think the
Dorries'
government should own any
rationale-
broadcaster?
Well, I actually personally don't, and that's a whole other conversation about the BBC, but we won't go there tonight. We've spoken about a lot on the show. But Nadine Dorries' rationale, Miata, is that actually it's impossible under this current model for Channel 4 to compete in a world of streaming, because without wanting to bore everyone, the way Channel 4 is set up, they can't actually make their own programmes, which means they can't make any money off the shows that they commission. Under this arrangement, with Channel 4 going private, they will be able to start making their own programmes and potentially compete against some of the bigger streaming platforms.
So, I don't know, when the executive is saying that that line doesn't hold, that in fact, you know, they're able to produce the content that they think the public want to produce, there's a particular role that they're trying to play within the market, I kind of buy that. I don't know, I'm not an expert.
Channel 4's in big trouble. It's been in big trouble since it ended Big Brother, and that tells you a lot. No one really watches it. It hasn't had any big hits. Channel 4 news ratings are down the pan, and I think the government must hold firm on this decision. But Miata Fanbula, Calvin Robinson, Carol McGiffin, thank you so much. My superstar panel are here all evening. But still to come, with the Ukrainian president and accusing France and Germany of appeasing Putin. Are we doing enough here in the Western world? Well, GBNews star Nigel Farage weighs in on that, as well as plans to send illegal migrants arriving in the UK to Rwanda coming up at 9:30. But up next in the clash is the SNP's hatchet jog of an advert stoking hate against Tories. A Scottish Conservative MSP and Scottish Spike columnist battle a former SNP councillor in what's sure to be a very fiery clash. Let me know what you think on this, Dan at gbnews.uk. I'll play you the ad after the break, and we'll have our poll running at GBNews on Twitter. I'll bring you the results in just a few minutes' time.
Good evening, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Strengthening winds will bring a colder feel for most tomorrow. There'll be some sunshine, but most places we'll see a few showers during the day too. Here's the bigger picture. Weather system moving in. Tucked in here, we've had some pretty mild air for most, but northern Scotland's been poking out into the colder air, and that's why we've seen some heavy snowfall across the far north, easing off over the next couple of hours, turning to rain and a wet and windy night across Orkney. Otherwise, it'll be rain showers moving in, some clear spells, temperatures not falling too far, certainly for most places. But as the rain clears from northern Scotland, well, we could see things turning a little icy here as temperatures drop down close to freezing. On to the details for Wednesday. It stays wet and windy in Orkney. Elsewhere, it'll be a breezy day with that breeze throwing showers across all areas. Plenty of them in the west. Even further east, though, I think we'll see showers developing as we go through the day. There will be sunny spells between the showers. It won't rain all day, far from it. And when the sun's out, we could still get up into the mid-teens. But with a strengthening wind, it will feel a bit cooler than today for sure. And the wind's getting lively on Wednesday night across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, and then picking up everywhere as we head into Thursday. A bitter wind developing too. There are chance of some more persistent rain across southernmost counties during Wednesday night and into Thursday. And further north, the showers turning more and more wintry as temperatures again fall down close to freezing. So again, the potential for things to be a little icy. On to Thursday then, and the wet weather in the south. As I say, some uncertainty about how much we see on Thursday morning, but it should clear away, and then generally sunny spells. Further north, more showers, turning more wintry, snow on hills, sleet, hail at low levels, and temperatures only in single figures for the vast majority. When you add on that wind, it really will feel bitter during Thursday afternoon. Goodbye.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Nigel Farage and Darren Grimes on the way, but time now for the clash. Scheming Sturgeon's obsession with England and the Tories hasn't always been pretty, with the angry Scottish leader not shy of using her venomous tongue over the years. But the latest serving of SNP savagery has taken a more disturbing turn in the form of this bizarre new campaign ad.
The Tory record is a long list of lies, self-interest, cronyism, sleaze, cover-ups and incompetence. Which brings us to a very important question. Just how far can we trust the Tories? This is Betty. She's going to help us answer the question. Ah, and here's our Tory. Right, Betty, show us how far we can trust the Tories. Well, there you have it. You can trust a Tory about as far as you can throw them. Thanks, Betty.
A granny throwing a mannequin Tory across the field. I don't know whether to laugh at the SNP's bile-fueled attempt at politics or give them a call to ask if everything's okay. The ad clip was produced ahead of May's local elections, but Scottish Conservatives aren't amused, with leader Douglas Ross saying it was a negative, bitter advert, and MSP Stephen Kerr declaring clearly they are concerned that even their base is deserting them if they have to stoop to such personal and unpleasant politics, even for them. This, of course, comes after a barrage of cringeworthy SNP assaults on the UK government, the Conservative Party and England spanning back years. So as Sturgeon's lot show they really have lost the plot with their latest campaign ad, we're asking if the SNP is stoking hatred against the Tories. Send me your thoughts to dan@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. You can vote in our poll and watch the awful video while you're there, and I'll bring you the results very shortly. But first, going head-to-head on this tonight is Scottish Conservative MSP Graham Simpson, former Glasgow SNP councillor Austin Sheridan, and Spiked columnist and senior lecturer at Abertay University, Dr. Stuart Wootton. Austin Sheridan, you can't defend this ad, can you? You must be a little bit embarrassed watching that.
Well, I think you got it right in your opening. You said you didn't know whether to laugh at it, or be concerned. I think the key was to laugh at it. It was meant to be a comical take on how far can you throw someone, which is a common Scottish saying. But when it comes to stoking hatred, I mean, when you look at the kind of adverts that the Conservatives have ran over the past years, for example, with Alex Salmond with Ed Miliband in his pocket, playing two nations off against each other, that is something the Tories are used to doing. And that wasn't funny, that wasn't comical. This was comical and it was funny, and that's the way it's meant to be taken.
You're trying to stoke hate against Conservatives, though, aren't you?
No, we're not trying to stoke hate against Conservatives, but what we are clear is we don't agree with Conservative policy. We are clear that the behaviour of the Conservatives has been deplorable, and we are confident about pointing that out, and we make no apologies for it.
Austin, I put it to you that Sturgeon and the SNP are just so embarrassed about their record in government, which, let's be honest, has been completely dire, that you don't want to talk about any of your own achievements.
Not at all. Nothing to be embarrassed about our record. The latest opinion poll shows the SNP way in the lead. The latest opinion
I'm not talking about the polls, Austin. I'm not talking about the polls. I'm talking about your achievements. Because no SNP achievement is mentioned in that advertisement. It's all about stoking hatred and a division against the Tories. And to me, that's a sign of a party in deep, deep trouble.
It's about pointing out where the Conservatives have went wrong, especially over the past couple of years, over the pandemic, how they've taken the UK public for fools, and we make no apology for pointing that out.
The SNP have been in power for years.
And we're leading in the polls, and we're doing very well, and we're proud of
how's
our record.
How's the Scottish health system going? How's the Scottish health system going, Austin Sheridan?
Well, it's going better than the English health system. That's all I can say in relation to that.
There you go again. There you go again. No, it's all whataboutery.
But what we're talking about, we're talking about the advert, right? And we're talking about the message that it's meant to put across. And the message that it's putting across is that the Tories' behaviour over the past couple of years has been deplorable, and we make no apology.
Well, you're talking about trust. You're talking about not being able to trust Tories, Austin. I just wonder if we can trust Nicola Sturgeon. Wasn't there meant to have been a second independence referendum by now?
No, there's not meant to be one by now. The manifesto's 2023. That's next year, Dan.
It's not going to happen, is it, Austin?
Well, as I say, I would hope it would happen, and I would certainly be the first person to hold the SNP accountable to make sure it happens. Make no mistake, Dan, although I'm SNP, I'm always happy to hold my colleagues accountable, and I will be making sure within the SNP, I'll be pushing to have that second referendum in 2023.
OK, let me go to the Scottish Conservative MSP, Graham Simpson. Did you get angry or did you laugh when you saw that ad, Graham?
I've got to be honest with you, Dan. I was in stitches when I saw that ad. I thought it was a spoof. I thought it was like something from Monty Python. It was like a throwback ad, and I must apologise to Austin for not wearing a pinstripe suit tonight and not fitting his stereotype of a Conservative, but it was certainly insulting to Conservatives. It was also insulting to grannies, because if you saw at the end, you had an elderly woman sat on top of a hill, a really bizarre scene, doing her knitting and calling her Betty. I just thought it was an utterly ridiculous advert. It was meant to be for the local council elections. It mentioned nothing about what the SNP want to do in the local council elections, probably because they've stripped councils of money over the past 15 years. And Austin, as a former local councillor, should know that.
Well, look, I want to bring in Dr. Stuart Wootton here as our neutral broker tonight. Dr. Wootton, what's this ad really about?
I think it's using the cynicism and it's almost anti-politics. It's one of the problems now in Scotland is that the national question almost means that politics is in sort of a suspended animation, because all you need to do is troll out the kind of anti-Tory framework and hold up the Scottish flag, and that is all that politics is. So rather than, I think, as you mentioned, rather than discussing what has the SNP actually done over the last sort of 5-10 years and promoting that, they just do a sort of cheap, cynical kind of anti-politics. So it's about sleaze, it's about greed, it's about this sort of thing. It's not actually about politics as such. And what's fascinating, I think, about the SNP, which is they've done it very successfully, but the SNP essentially, for me, represent the modern elites. Okay, so if the Tories historically, you would say, represented the old establishment, the SNP today represent the modern elites. And in that respect, they're incredibly elitist. And if you look at their policies, whether that's the named person policy, where they said every child needs a state guardian, essentially, suggested a lack of trust for parents. They've introduced the smacking ban, so that the lightest smack now, that on the back of the hand, is now a crime. Again, they seem not to trust parents. They've introduced a hate crime bill, where saying incorrect things in your own home can mean that you're arrested. They appear to think that the Scottish public are bigots and need to be regulated. In fact, you can see that the SNP's own senior legal person, Dorothy Bain, is arguing that we should get rid of jury trials in rape cases. And the reason she believes this is because she thinks that the public are bigoted and sexist and can't be trusted, and they want to get rid of jury trials.
And we saw that over COVID, didn't we?
Keep going through their laws, and almost all of the laws that they've introduced are contemptuous of the Scottish public.
Austin Sheridan, I think the SNP should be trumpeting its achievements ahead of the local elections. I think maybe the problem is they don't have many. But what would you say are Sturgeon's top 3 achievements as First Minister? Because maybe once you've given them, that could be used in the next SNP advertisement.
Making it illegal to assault your child is a massive achievement of the SNP.
OK, that's one. What are the other 2?
Right? Making it illegal to assault your child and bringing in free education for all Scots based on the ability to learn, not on the ability to pay.
OK, and the third?
Abolishing prescription charges, making our health service absolutely free of charge, and introducing free dental care as well. These are all things that are progressive policies, things that go against the Tory grain. And I'm proud to stand by the SNP's record in government.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was the former Glasgow SNP councillor Austin Sheridan, the Smite columnist and senior lecturer at Aberdeen University, Dr. Stuart Wootton, and Scottish Conservative MSP Graham Simpson. But what do you think? Well, Spencer on Twitter says, if only these people put that much effort into making Scotland a better place for Scottish people. Savala says, Nicola Sturgeon's SNP are no strangers to hatred. Sometimes it's against the English, sometimes the Tories, and sometimes it's against Labour supporters. And from Ryan, really not sure how this stokes hatred. Wouldn't you say the exact same thing about the SNP and Labour? And your verdict is now in. Overwhelming. 90% of you say that SNP ad stokes hatred against the Tories. Just 10% of you say there's nothing wrong with it. Coming up, could Tesla billionaire Elon Musk save free speech and defeat cancel culture by taking over Twitter? And could he pave the way for a glorious Trump return? Darren Grimes, tonight's Outsider. But first, as Zelenskyy takes the UN, Germany and France to task over alleged Russian war crimes, are the West doing enough to help Ukraine? Plus, should Britain send illegal migrants coming across the channel to Rwanda? Two big topics for Nigel Farage to take on in What the Farage. He will be here in just 2 minutes, so don't go anywhere.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
What the Farage time now, and Volodymyr Zelenskyy has taken a bitter swipe at the United Nations Security Council, saying the alliance has been unable to guarantee safety and peace in Eastern Europe in the face of Russian aggression. Speaking via video link to a UN meeting in New York this afternoon, the Ukrainian president questioned the value of the 15-member Security Council, which has been unable to take any action over Russia's invasion of Ukraine because Moscow, of course, is a veto power.
I would like to remind you of Article 1, Chapter 1 of the UN Charter. What is the purpose of our organization? Its purpose is to maintain peace and make sure that peace is adhered to. And now the UN Charter is violated literally, starting with the Article 1. And if so, what is the point of all other articles?
But Zelenskyy hasn't just been criticising the UN. Yesterday, he also took aim at Germany and France, blaming former German Chancellor Angela Merkel and ex-French President Nicolas Sarkozy for 14 years of failed diplomacy with Russia, enabling war crimes in Ukraine. So, Nigel, what do you make of Zelenskyy hitting out at the UN, Germany and France?
Well, the UN doesn't have much power over this. It's a big, big talking shop. But I do think when it comes to Europe, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because we get these big, bold, grand statements that come from European Union member states and from Brussels itself. We get the French president on endless, it seems, phone calls with Putin that achieve nothing. And when push comes to shove, sanctions are a complete waste of time. All the while, Germany is funding Vladimir Putin's war machine. Be in no doubt about that. They go on buying gas. They can't see any way out of it. And it reminds me of that wonderful confrontation between Trump and Merkel when he warned her. He said, you know, you're all accusing me of being somehow working in tandem with Russia. Actually, it's Germany that have made themselves utterly dependent on Russian gas and Russian oil. And all the while the Germans go on buying vast quantities of these materials. Putin's got the money for his war. So there is so much hypocrisy and doublespeak around this that it's quite extraordinary.
Macron does deserve a lot of criticism, Nigel, because, 24 phone calls with Putin. What's he achieved?
Well, he's shown the French people that he's a statesman and he's the man you must re-elect and not that nasty Marine Le Pen who might do such dreadful things. Honestly, I think it's posturing, it's positioning, it's electioneering. He has achieved 3/5 of 5/8 of nothing.
Now, Nigel, I want to come to breaking news closer to home now. It's, of course, been reported today that Boris Johnson is set to announce plans to send illegal Channel migrants to Rwanda to be processed. The Home Office is neither confirming nor denying the reports. And you're not convinced of this as a plan?
Well, look, I mean, they have to do something, and they have ahead of May the 5th and the local elections to be seen to do something. I mean, just think about it. 28,500 people came across the channel last year. At the moment, for the same time in the year, we're running at triple that figure. And they know, the Conservative Party, from their polling, that especially in the red wall seats, this is infuriating voters who thought by voting for Brexit and then voting Johnson in 2019, we'd get back control of our borders rather than be made an international laughingstock as we currently are. Because we're part of the European Convention on Human Rights, returning people to France is not possible. Actually, Dan, even removing failed asylum seekers is very difficult, all the while we're signed up to ECHR. They had to do something, so offshore processing was the obvious thing. What are the upsides? Well, the upside is, would you pay a trafficker 5,000 euros if you thought within 48 hours of coming into Dover, you might land in Rwanda? That's the possible upside. The downside is the cost per person will be simply vast, and it's only a matter of weeks or months before we start getting reports that people are being treated badly in camps in Rwanda, people are being abused, exploited. So I don't think long-term this is the solution. And actually what I think is we need Brexit 2.0. And Brexit 2.0 not only redefines the 1951 definition of what a refugee is, because it's hopelessly outdated in the modern world, but we have to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We have to leave the auspices of that European Court in Strasbourg. That is the only way to, and I quote you, Boris Johnson, take back control of our borders. And until they do that, nothing effective, really effective, is going to happen.
Nigel, we need more than just talk this time, don't we, as well? We're not going to be sucked in by the possibility of a plan before the local elections. We've heard about enough possible plans. We need something concrete.
Yeah, we do. And they're going to try and push this through. I'm certain of that. There's a cabinet meeting tomorrow at which this will be discussed. I've no doubt it'll be approved. There's some opposition to it. David Davis is voicing concerns about it from the backbenches. I think it'll happen. And I think what will happen also, Dan, is before May the 5th, you'll see a couple of plane loads of people heading off to Rwanda. And then Boris and Briton can say, we've solved the problem. They won't have done.
Why do you think offshore processing won't act as a deterrent, Nigel, in the same way as it did in Australia?
Well, I think in the short term, it will help. I've made that point already. So I'm sort of giving, there's a partial short-term endorsement, but a long-term headache. I think that's the way that I see it. And by the way, Tony Abbott, who was the Aussie Prime Minister, determined to deal with boatloads coming into Australia from Indonesia, he started off with offshore processing. He was then met with global condemnation of the conditions in those camps. He then said, we're going to change tack. Nobody that enters Australia via this route will ever be given refugee status. And that was when they started. Do you know what they did? They towed the boats back to Indonesia. And guess what happened? They were condemned by the UN, the European Union, the globalists. But you know what else happened? People stopped coming. I mean, so in the end, they did go through this process of trying offshore processing. In the end, returns were the only effective policy. That is the way to cut off the traffickers' trade at the knees. It takes guts, it takes courage, it takes leadership, it takes accepting you're going to be criticized by the global elites, but you cannot do it all the while you're signed up to ECHR, because we are, after all, a law-abiding country. That needs to be dealt with. It needs to become a real issue as the next general election approaches.
Of course, Nigel, you read the Westminster gossip and Priti Patel's position as Home Secretary again coming under the microscope as a result of her failure to stop the boats. Do you buy that?
Well, look, I mean, I think actually Priti Patel, of all the people in the cabinet, is probably politically the closest to you and I. But I think she actually believes in free markets. She believes in entrepreneurship. She believes in proper law and order. And she absolutely believes in proper border controls. But she's found herself as Home Secretary talking a big game, but unable to deliver. And she finds herself working under a Prime Minister who frankly couldn't care less about this. A Prime Minister who, when he was Mayor of London, offered mass amnesties to people who'd arrived illegally, which of course only encourages more to come. And she must think to herself that in terms of her own career progression, probably accepting the job of Home Secretary was a mistake, because when you overplay expectations and underdeliver, you've got a real problem. So she is in a right pickle with this. Hence, I would guess behind the scenes, she's pushing Rwanda harder than anybody else. She's likely to get it accepted. In the short term, it may work. And we might see front pages of the Daily Mail saying, wow, isn't it wonderful? Problem solved. This is a short-term fix. It is not a long-term solution.
Fascinating analysis as ever. Nigel Farage, thank you so much. And of course, Nigel back with Farage tomorrow night at 7 here on GBNews. But coming up, as a regular Brit is forced to pay more than £2,000 for leaving his house in lockdown, should all fines for COVID rule breakers now be rescinded? We'll debate that in the Media Buzz at 10. You'll also get your first look at the newspaper front pages for tomorrow. But next, is Trump about to make a triumphant return to Twitter? Now it's in the control of a free speech-loving billionaire. Darren Grimes is tonight's outsider. He's up straight after the break.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
A first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming up, but first, The Outsider with Darren Grimes. Everyone knows Twitter has been a cesspit for years, but now the richest man in the world looks set to save the social media platform from its woke-fueled demise. Its knight in shining armour is none other than Elon Musk, the £200 billion brains behind PayPal, SpaceX and electric car giant Tesla. It was announced today that the man who wants to colonise Mars first has his sights set on bringing Twitter back to its former glory. To do that, he's bagged himself a seat on the company's board after buying a £2.2 billion stake to become the firm's biggest shareholder. But how did this come about? Well, for years, Twitter has been accused of rampant deplatforming and censorship, most notably after they banned former US President Donald Trump amid the US Capitol riots in January last year. But Twitter still allows the Taliban's leaders and warlords free rein to use their platform without hassle, and seemingly has no problem with trolls sending death threats to J.K. Rowling either. Musk teased to his 80 million followers last month by asking in a poll whether they thought Twitter adhered to enabling free speech. And after a resounding no vote of 70%, he pulled the trigger on his massive purchase, hinted Twitter will introduce an edit button, and was swiftly elevated to the board. But Darren Grimes, perhaps the biggest question is, will this move from Musk see Donald Trump reinstated to Twitter?
I actually think that Donald Trump stands the best chance he ever has had now that Elon Musk is on the board of Twitter. They are going to have to listen to the views of this innovator who, you know, he's buying PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, which is a private enterprise trying to get us to Mars, as you say, Dan. This is a man who is a real innovator. He shakes things up. Now that he's on the board, relentlessly pro-freedom of expression, libertarian, I think actually Donald Trump is going to be back on this platform. Because let's not forget, Russia can spout their nonsense on there. The Taliban can spout their nonsense on there. And actually people are saying, well, hang on a minute. Who was the democratically elected leader of the free world in 2016 to 2020 has been kicked off. Now that Musk has this 9.2% stake in Twitter as the largest individual shareholder, he can actually start to call some of the shots here and start to say, actually, I think Twitter has far too much power and doesn't use that power responsibly, i.e., as he said there in that tweet he showed, Dan, this is the public square. Twitter has become the de facto public square. Journalists, politicians, influencers, they're all getting their information from this very influential platform. And he's saying, hang on, it can't be right that you don't allow anti-lockdown voices, that you don't allow those skeptical about, I don't know, it could be things like net zero, and of course, the president of the free world, to have a voice on this very important platform. And that poll that you showed there, Dan, I think it's worth noting that it got over 2 million votes on it. 2 million votes. That's 2 million people saying, yeah, I agree, this platform that I use doesn't actually respect the core principles that it purports to do so.
I was one of those folk who voted. And now he's asking if Twitter should have an edit button too, which of course was just a way to get all of the Twitter fans on his side, because it's been something that folk have been calling for many years. Darren, do we trust Elon Musk? Do we really believe that he's a free speech champion, or is there some other ulterior motive here?
No, I really do actually believe that he's serious on this. I think it's very easy for folk on the right to at least pander to the right. I actually think he really means it, though. I think since he was announced as on the board of Twitter itself. You've seen the fact that this is a very rich cat among the liberal techie pigeons, because a lot of people, Dan, are so upset about this. A lot of people are saying, hang on a minute. You've even had Twitter employees resign. And that, to me, suggests that people are taking this seriously, that people are saying, well, hang on, this is a guy who will actually make the board pay attention, who will actually say, look, I'm going to start calling some of the shots here. And Republicans, I think, Dan, Republicans in the US didn't take this seriously enough, because the Democrats are now calling for more censorship and more control over social media and things like this. And now you've got someone like Musk, very, very wealthy man, very, very influential man, saying that Americans are supposed to have fundamental rights enshrined in law, but companies like Twitter are putting themselves above the law. They're making themselves the ultimate arbiters of what is acceptable debate and speech. And that isn't going to sit well with somebody like Musk, who is, I think, in the best way possible, Dan, a free speech extremist. And I say that as a compliment. I don't mean that to sound derogatory at all. Because, Dan, remember the Hunter Biden story that the New York Post posted just before the presidential election?
Censored
that was
by
censored
Twitter.
by Twitter.
Yeah.
Exactly. So someone like Musk is going to say, guys, hang on a minute. You cannot do this. You cannot have Silicon Valley elites deciding that they favour a Biden presidency and therefore covering up what might be favourable to a Trump presidency. And what made Twitter so great ultimately was the idea that you had different arrays of opinion. You had ideas and trends that advance our not just connectivity, but ideas and the public square, as Musk put it there at the very start of this introduction of this segment, Dan.
No, very good point, Darren. So important indeed. It does make me laugh, though, all of those woke-topian snowflake Twitter workers saying, I quit. The thought of having someone on the board who believes in free speech, that's too much for me. My goodness, they're pathetic. Darren Grimes, thank you so much. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has addressed the Russian people directly to urge them to seek out the truth about Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
Don't just take my word for it. All you need is a VPN connection to access independent information from anywhere in the world. And when you find the truth, share it.
But as ordinary Russians continue their battle against Kremlin censorship, should the West be more appreciative of this fundamental right? Author Mick Hume tackles that in Uncancelled at 10:40. Plus, you'll get a first look at how tomorrow's newspaper front pages cover the Ukraine crisis and beyond throughout the next hour. Elsewhere, after Trump became the latest political figure to wade into the row over trans women in sports,
and a party that's unwilling to admit that men and women are biologically different, in defiance of all scientific and human history, is a party that should not be anywhere near the levers of power in the United States of America.
Well, I'll be joined by former US national team swimmer Jeri Shanteau, who's putting her career and legacy on the line to defend women's sports from imposters like Leah Thomas. She's here at 10:20. From one president talking sense to...
Deeply proud of the work she's doing as First Lady with Joining Forces Initiative. She started with Michelle Obama when she was Vice President.
That's right, Sleepy Joe's at it again. We'll have more on his latest blunder as we kick off the media buzz in just a moment. Plus, as a regular Brit is forced to pay more than £2,000 simply for leaving his house in lockdown, should all fines for COVID rule breakers now be rescinded? And as calorie counts hit menus at England's food chains from tomorrow, are they a useful weapon in the war on obesity or the nanny state in action? And as pop icon Madonna unsettles her fans by posting this clip online, Can you be too old for social media? I say no. She's a TikTok queen. But my superstar panel return to debate all of that shortly. Tonight, I'm joined by broadcaster and loose women's star Carol McGiffin, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and making her debut, the economist Miata Fanbula. And as ever, a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass will be crowned before the end of the show, so do stay out with us. But first, the news with Simon Pusey.
Hello, I'm Simon Pusey. It's just gone 10 o'clock in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has appealed to Russian people to seek out the truth for themselves about Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. In a video message directed to the Russian population, Boris Johnson said they only needed an online VPN connection to gain access to independent information from around the world. It's after the mayor of the Ukrainian town Bucha has accused Russian troops of deliberately killing civilians during their month-long occupation of the town. The Kremlin denies the allegations.
Civilians massacred, shot dead with their hands tied, women raped in front of their young children, bodies crudely burned, dumped in mass graves or just left lying in the street. The reports are so shocking and so sickening, it's no wonder your government is seeking to hide them from you. Your president knows that if you could see what was happening, you would not support his war.
Ukraine's president has called for Nuremberg-style trials after accusing Russia of committing what he called the most terrible war crimes since World War II. Speaking via video link at the United Nations Security Council in New York, Volodymyr Zelenskyy warned of further Russian cruelty in other Ukrainian towns and villages. His comments followed United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres warning Russia's invasion of Ukraine is one of the greatest challenges ever to international world order. President Zelenskyy described in detail the attacks across the country.
Russia wants to turn Ukrainians into silent slaves. We are dealing with a state that turns its veto at the UN Security Council into the right to cause death, which undermines the whole architecture of global security, which lets the evil remain unpunished and spread across the world.
Speaking in Poland, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says the UK will step up its sanctions against Russia.
This week, we will announce that we've frozen over $350 billion of Putin's war chest, making over 60% of the regime's $604 billion foreign currency reserves unavailable. Our coordinated sanctions are pushing the Russian economy back to the Soviet era.
The UK, US and Australia have agreed to work together on hypersonic and anti-hypersonic weaponry. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, US President Joe Biden and Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison say it is part of the AUKUS military pact announced last year. The three countries reiterating their unwavering commitment to an international system which they say respects human rights. And the D-Day veteran Harry Billinge has died at the age of 96. The former Royal Engineer was 18 years old when he was one of the first British soldiers to land on Gold Beach in 1994. He was one of only 4 survivors from his unit. He later fought in Caen and Falaise Pocket in Normandy. His daughter Sally Billinge Shandley said some of his last words were, "Love one another." TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. And let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages hot off the press. And the Metro asks, you been on the vodka? This is the story that Russia are blaming Ukraine for their own invasion. Putin's envoy to the UN has claimed that Russian troops who are currently invading Ukraine mean peace. They are denying reported massacres and claiming that Ukrainians are Nazis. Meanwhile, on the Daily Telegraph front page, President Zelenskyy has told the UN to stop Putin or dissolve yourself and called for Nuremberg-style trials for Kremlin leaders. And this is funny based on what we're talking about. ITV poised to launch a £1 billion takeover bid for Channel 4, which is to be privatised by 2024. And if that happens, don't worry, Channel 4 News will stay and probably become even woker. My superstar panel back with me now, the columnist and media personality, Carol McGiffin, one of the only non-woke stars of ITV these days, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and the economist Miata Fanbula. Now, when we look back at the many chilling measures introduced in lockdown, threatening ordinary Brits with a fine of up to £10,000 for refusing to quake at home alone has got to be up there. I'm talking about lockdown fines tonight, not for the reason the rest of the MSM are, but because of the shocking case of a Tottenham man who has been made to pay £2,200, 14 months, after simply going outside without and I hate this wording, reasonable excuse. Westminster Magistrates Court handed out the fine to the poor bloke after he was stopped just before 2 a.m. during the January 2021 lockdown, driving with a male passenger he did not live with. He claimed he had simply been moving his girlfriend's car. Acknowledging that aggravating factors could have played a part in the sentence last month, though any speeding or driving offences were not tried separately, Evening Standard Courts reporter Tristan Kirk yesterday described the fine as the single biggest he had come across for simply going outside without a good reason, adding, "The more I've looked at it, the more concerning it has become." Now, he pointed out that the massive fine was a potentially life-changing sum of money, as is the £1,100 charge that most first-time lockdown breakers were punished with. Members of the civil service, meanwhile, such as former ethics chief Helen McNamara, are reportedly being handed £50 fines over Partygate. And I don't make a point of that, by the way, because I think they should necessarily be paying more. I've always said that saga is categorical proof lockdown rules were not only inhumane, but impossible for anyone, even the people who made them, to follow. And therefore, all fines must now be rescinded. I mean, Carol McGiffin, this is insane, isn't it? January 2021, when we were wise enough to make our own decisions, this poor bloke goes for a drive, £2,200. That can cripple people, especially at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. For something that is just, I mean, I'm just absolutely horrified by this. I'm horrified by the fact that they would even think about fining someone for doing something so simple as leaving their own house, like you say, without a reasonable excuse. I mean, it's just abhorrent. It's just so wrong, and especially that it's 14 months later.
Yeah.
And
when we should know better as a society.
Well, exactly. And I know for a fact that a lot of fines were dished out during the first lockdown as well, during the second lockdown. And, you know, I don't know how many were there, about 45
well, this was the third.
Or something. Yeah.
This is the most crazy thing. January 2021, that's the third national lockdown.
Yeah, exactly.
And the biggest fine.
The one that went on till the end of March.
Yeah.
And I just wonder whether it's just revenue raising again. Like, let's see if we can make an example of at least somebody, because this is, as far as I know, the only one that's actually been made the media and has been talked about. So why would they do that 14 months later? I mean, when no one else I know who's had fines has paid them and has been chased for them. Are they going to catch up? Are they going to start chasing people for these fines? I don't know.
Well, Calvin, that's clearly the point, isn't it? As Carol says, this is the judiciary making an example to try and scare non-fine payers. Because, by the way, if you've been fined, my advice would be do not pay.
Absolutely. What has happened to us? We can't call ourselves a free nation when people have been charged thousands of pounds for going outside of their own home, can we? That is ridiculous. We have a duty to disobey immoral laws, and this was an immoral law. The lockdowns didn't work. They didn't help in the COVID situation. They made things worse. Mental health is through the roof. Cancer, diabetes patients are not being seen. We know all of this. So why are we still charging people for breaking this ridiculous rule? And the government officials themselves are being charged right now, aren't they, off the back of the Sue Gray report? I was actually at a number 10 party tonight. I was laughing my head off thinking if Dan could see me now after the months we've been talking about these parties at number 10. But, of course, they're legal now. But the point being, they
What was this about? I thought you were an outsider.
They were still going on.
Exactly. The point being, the people who made these rules were not following them in the first place. Which
you've got a dish on this. Oh. What party was this?
This was an Easter party. Although it's not Easter yet, the Prime Minister wanted to host a little Easter celebration.
Nice.
Yeah, it was all right.
You've been fraternising with the PM tonight.
Well, I'll put him straight, Carol.
Was he there?
Yes, he was.
Was he downing booze?
He did have a glass of champagne in his hand while he said Happy Easter to us all. It's not Easter yet, though. We can't stand there and say he has risen, but I appreciate the sentiment.
OK, that's why you dressed up.
I dressed up for your show.
Like that.
I thought it was just for me. Miata, do you think we should rescind all of these fines?
No, but I think there are two issues. I think there's a question about proportionality, and it does seem like a high fine. I don't know the background behind it. It feels disproportionate given that there was a ratcheting up scale. So I think there are probably other circumstances at play, and the question will be, is it proportionate? If it's not, he should appeal. I think there's a separate issue around whether you agreed with it or not. There were a set of laws that were in place, and in the end, we are a society that should respect those laws.
No, not at all. If someone says to you, you need to kill that person, this is now the law, would you follow that law? Well, not at all. You have to disobey moral laws. It's our duty.
Well, the point is...
The Nazis said, I was just following orders.
Yeah,
we cannot ever say, I'm just following orders, I'm following the law.
Well, so in the end, we are a democracy, and a whole load of...
We didn't vote for those laws either.
A whole load of policymakers from across the political spectrum voted them in. So they were laws. My view
they weren't voted in. They disobeyed the democratic process. The parliamentary system was disobeyed.
Well, no, actually.
Yes, it was.
Parliament voted.
No. Parliament didn't debate on those laws.
Parliament voted for a set of legislation that went through. Well, actually, the first set of rules that went through Parliament, and Parliament voted for it. There's questions about whether the executive then pushed the boundaries. But in any case, I think that they did save lives. You disagree with that, but I think they did save lives.
The evidence suggests that they didn't.
I think that they did save lives.
It doesn't matter what you think. That's a belief structure.
Well, no. You don't know the counterfactual. Had we not put in, particularly the first lockdown, before we had the vaccines, the levels of deaths by everything that we know suggests it would be much higher than
No. Oxford University, Harvard University, all the big universities that have researched this have suggested that lockdowns did not help and they were detrimental.
Let's not have a conversation about lockdown.
Well, you brought it up.
Well, my argument is, right, we have laws, and in the end we have a system that means that we have to abide by those laws.
Which I just said, if a law is immoral, you shouldn't follow it.
Well, I don't think it is immoral. Well, I don't think it is immoral, and nor does the majority of the British public thought they were immoral.
I don't know if you can speak on behalf of the British public. That would debate. That would strongly debate. Unless you have evidence to suggest that you have polling.
The polling that's been done suggests that your view is a minority view. The polling that was done by Comres, that was done by YouGov, the public supported lockdowns for a big part of it. There's a debate that will look back in history about whether it's the right thing or not. But at the time, given the tools that we had...
When it comes to life and death, you can't wait to look back.
No, at the time, given the tools that we had, it was the intervention.
We had plans in place for years.
It was the intervention that
pandemics far worse. For pandemics far worse than
I would
COVID.
actually argue that lockdown ended up killing far, far more people because we had that very tough lockdown, which was never in the plan, and Valence himself said if we were to do that, it would result in a huge wave of deaths over 2020 into 2021. What happened? We did lock down hard, and sure enough, there was that massive wave of deaths from 2020 into 2021.
Well, the counterfactual is, had we not done that, the death rate would have been higher. But
it would have been higher in March, April and May 2020.
It doesn't negate from the fact...
It would have been, but it would have saved a lot of lives in the long run.
It doesn't negate from the fact that we had a set of rules, and in the end, if we're a society that we all say, actually, screw this rule, screw it, then we'd have complete anarchy. Now, question about whether the punishment is proportionate, and it should be consistent. So if civil servants are being charged £50, that should be the case for everyone. I suspect there's something behind this 2,000, and I don't know the sort of detail behind it. But if it's not
Evening Court reporter who is looking into this case couldn't find anything. Maybe it's because he refused to pay the fine.
Then he ought to appeal.
Well, it's probably because he refused to pay the fine,
but
I imagine.
Thousands of people refused to pay the fine.
Exactly, and they're making an example of them.
Exactly.
Exactly. Now, it seems like we can't go more than 24 hours without another funny, yet quite concerning Joe Biden blunder. The president's latest gaffe happened at a naval ceremony while he was praising his wife, the First Lady Jill, for her work and commitment to military families.
And I'm deeply proud of the work she's doing as First Lady with Joining Forces initiative she started with Michelle Obama when she was Vice President and now carries on.
Say what?
Oh.
Did Sleepy Joe just say his wife Jill was Obama's vice president, a job he held for 8 years? Or was he saying that Michelle was vice president? Have a look again.
And I'm deeply proud of the work she's doing as First Lady with Joining Forces initiative she started with Michelle Obama when she was Vice President and now carries on.
Not the first time, of course, the 79-year-old calamity-in-chief has struggled to remember who his wife is. I remember when he got poor Jill mixed up with Vice President Kamala Harris.
First Lady's husband contracting COVID, but look at this room and what you see. Pardon? That's right. She's fine. It's me. That's not together. The second lady, the first gentleman.
Oh, you've just got to feel sorry for the man now and for America. This is just so wrong. Amiata Vambula, Calvin Robinson, Carol McGiffin, do stand by, because coming up, a calorie counts on restaurant menus, the nanny state on speed. I'll serve up that debate to my superstar panel as the media buzz continues at 10:30. We'll have more front pages, and by then too. But next, do female athletes have a responsibility to speak out on trans competitors or risk the death of women's sport? Jeri Shanteau, former swimmer for the US national team, says, "Cancel me if you dare." And she's going to wade into the controversy over Leah Thomas and more straight after the break.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Pandemic's far worse.
Now, just when you thought the gender ideology debate couldn't get any more fiery, Donald Trump has weighed in. Speaking at a recent rally in Georgia, the former president lashed out at Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson, criticising her refusal to define the word woman during a Senate confirmation hearing.
And a party that's unwilling to admit that men and women are biologically different, in defiance of all scientific and human history, is a party that should not be anywhere near the levers of power in the United States of America.
The issue of biological sex has been pushed to the fore recently due to the prominence of trans athletes infiltrating women's sports, with 6'1" transgender swimmer Leah Thomas's NCAA title win drawing worldwide attention. And the issue has crossed the Atlantic, with cyclist Emily Bridges, who competed as a man until a few weeks ago, being barred from racing in the national championships on Saturday. Then, just yesterday, it was revealed that trans goalie Blair Hamilton, who used to play men's football, has been selected for the England University's women's side. Well, weighing in on the hot button issue is 11-time NCAA All-American swimming champion Jeri Shanteau. Jeri, great to have you here. Do you think female sports is at risk of extinction if this madness goes on?
Thank you for having me. Sadly, I do. I think that we are at the precipice of what that could look like ultimately if we don't stand up and make some changes. We need our governing bodies. We need the NCAA to stand up, protect women and their right to their fairness in sport, their opportunity in sport, and the right to the protection and privacy that they should also be having while participating in their sport.
Could you believe that Leah Thomas was able to compete in the NCAA competitions, which obviously was such a big part of your career?
I really couldn't initially, but once I started to really wrap my mind around what was happening, it has nothing to do with Leah, unfortunately. It has everything to do with, like I just said, the NCAA and our national governing bodies over each sport that ignored this issue. The NCAA even said in February, okay, we will follow the national governing body, which is USA Swimming, and what their policy on transgender inclusion would look like. The USA Swimming did their job, came out with their ruling, and the NCAA said, well, too little, too late. We're not going to implement that this season, and we don't want to take away from those athletes that it might.
Yeah, indeed. I completely agree. This isn't about Leah Thomas, but the issue is that if you had been racing against Leah Thomas, it wouldn't have been fair. I mean, your husband is an Olympic swimmer. I presume you know that physically you couldn't beat him in a race, and that doesn't make you not an incredible women's swimmer.
Correct. Women, Title IX will be 50 years this June, and women's category of sport was carved out because we knew that athletically we are different than males. We are not less than, we are not weaker than, we are different than males. Hence the reason our category has been carved out for us. And all of a sudden, unless I'm missing some recent science that has come out, we need to continue to make sure and honoring Title IX, which is we will not discriminate based on sex. And I think that's the really big word we need to honor here. The word woman is a social gender role, which I am happy to honor for Leah and any other trans woman athlete, transgender athlete. And that doesn't pertain, though, to sport. And we need to honor sport and recognize sex above gender in order to keep fairness in sport, unless we would like to not include women anymore. So I think our priorities, I think the UK Sports Council in October said that sport's going to have a decision to make. What do you value, inclusion, fairness, or safety? You're not going to get inclusion and fairness with trans women athletes in the female category. There's science that does back that, and there are papers that back that at this point. And we need our governing bodies to honor that science, to listen, and to make sure that we protect not only these women, but also the transgender athletes that at this point, in my opinion, are treated unfairly as well.
The problem is, Jeri, some of these sporting bodies have bought into the woke orthodoxy. They are in cahoots with organisations like Stonewall, which do prioritise inclusion above anything else. Do you think it might be the responsibility at some point for government to actually get involved in this and looking at passing laws to protect women's sport?
Absolutely. I mean, here in the United States right now, the only way that we can protect sex identity over gender identity within our school systems and within sport is by passing laws. So I do think it is going to be something that people need to educate themselves on. I think that most people look at this as, well, it's only sport, which is also important, of course. And maybe women are only losing out on titles or funding or scholarships or their future careers and opportunities. But there's so much more. You're losing out to be on the best stage that they could possibly be on. You're talking about the football player that's going to be a goalie. You're taking away an experience for a female athlete that has trained their whole lives to be represented in the biggest way that they can. That experience changes you as a person. My athletics gave me a confidence and changed the person I am today. Had I not had that, maybe I wouldn't have the confidence or ability to be on your show right now. It shapes women in all sorts of ways. And that's more of what I'm hoping by speaking out. It is more than just sport. You are literally going to change the way girls and women are going to be raised and therefore then be in society later and the way they contribute later in life.
Such fascinating points. Thank you so much for being brave enough to make them. That was 11-time NCAA All-American Swimming Champion, Jeri Shanteau. Now, speaking to Sports Illustrated recently, Leah Thomas said, "I'm a woman just like anybody else on the team. I've always viewed myself as just a swimmer. It's what I've done for so long. It's what I love. I get into the water every day and do my best." Coming up, with free speech one of the first casualties of the Ukrainian war, should the West be more appreciative of this fundamental right? Top journalist and author Mick Hume is uncancelled at 10:40. But first, do we really need calories on restaurant menus for the sake of our health? Or is this just the nanny state in action yet again? My superstar panel will return to chew over that in the media buzz after the break.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. More front pages have just been delivered. Let's look straight at them. The Guardian leads on President Zelensky's call to the UN for Russia to face war crimes over its actions in Ukraine. The publication also claims Boris Johnson will struggle to get plans to privatise Channel 4 through Parliament after an alleged Tory backlash. What the hell? You know, you don't rebel over lockdowns for 2 years, but you rebel over a promise to sell Channel 4. Ridiculous. The Eye also reports that a Tory rebellion could be brewing over plans to privatise Channel 4, with some Conservative backbenchers in the House of Lords objecting to the move. The Sun tells how sanction-hit oligarch Roman Abramovich has begged celebrity pals for £1 million just so he can stay afloat. The 55-year-old Russian has been starved of cash after his assets were frozen around the world. Elsewhere, it's revealed Prince Charles once asked disgraced Jimmy Savile to help the royal family, with public relations. Handwritten letters from the Prince to Savile are revealed in a new documentary. Charles describes Savile as the bloke who knows what's going on. Not good at the moment for the royal family. They don't need that. The Independent reports that ministers have been left in the dark as the COVID testing scheme ends. Scientists are warning of a public health risk as infection levels rise once more. By the way, if you want a test, you can have a test. Just buy one. Don't let Putin do this in your name, is the Boris Johnson quote on the front page of the Daily Mail. The PM has intervened to urge the Russian people to object to Putin's war against Ukraine. My superstar panel, back with me now, the columnist and media personality Carol McGiffin, the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and the economist Miata Van Bula. Now, breaking tonight, in just 90 minutes, restaurants in England will be legally required to include the calorie content of dishes on their menus. The legislation applies to food chains with 250 employees or more and is part of the government's war on obesity, a problem which currently costs the NHS £6.1 billion every year. A Public Health England survey found that 79% of respondents back the idea, but it means when we're trying to enjoy a meal out, we're having to indulge in information none of us really want to know, like the fact a Five Guys cheeseburger and fries, I could do with one of them right now, weighs in at a whopping 1,930 calories, or how about a large Domino's Americano double decadence pizza, yes please, that tips the scales at 1,988 calories.
Are we being sponsored by
I
Five Guys
want
and
it.
Domino's?
I want it. No, because this is very bad for you, Calvin. Very, very bad for you. So, Miata, is this a good way to tackle the obesity pandemic, or just an example of the nanny state on speed?
I think it's a really good. By the way, I'm really excited about this as someone that's trying to watch my weight.
Oh, Miata, sorry, we've lost your microphone, so hold that thought. We'll come back to you in just a moment. Your first night, can you believe it? Calvin Robinson, you disagree?
This is terrible. The state should get out of my life. If I want a burger, that's between me and the person I'm willing to pay for the burger. No one else's business. If I want to get fat, that's on me. If I want to stay slim, that is on me. Why is the state getting into every single element of our lives, micromanaging us like they are our nanny? That's why we call them the nanny state. I think what this comes down to is they think people are making the wrong choices. It's my choice to make, not theirs.
Carol McGiffin, you're obviously someone who thinks a lot about what you consume. Would you feel that this would help you at a restaurant?
No, because I already know what's in food, and I've made it my business to find that out, and I found that out at a young age. And you know, when I get all the time people telling me, oh, it's all right for you because you're not fat. Well, I'm not fat because I don't want to be fat, and I don't want to eat food that's going to make me fat. I mean, it's not to say that I don't, but, you know, people have to know what they can put in and how much they can take before, you know, they're not actually expending any of that energy. So, and people don't think like that. So the fact that the government actually says this is to tackle the obesity epidemic, it's too late. People know that food is fattening. They know that already, but they'll still eat it. So it's not going to change anything. All that does is just spoil everybody's dinner out. That's all it does.
Yeah, a lot, Carol. I get on my Instagram because I put all my food up.
Yeah.
And people message like, "Oh, how do you manage to eat all that and not get fat? Oh, it's all right for you because I couldn't eat that." But yeah, I don't eat that all the time. It's personal responsibility, and I manage my levels.
Because if I did, yeah.
I mean, I was initially torn on this one because I definitely believe that we should see calories of food in supermarkets, for example. But actually, it's almost a bit pointless, this Miata, because it doesn't have macros, which are actually what a lot of people need to lose weight, which is the protein, carbohydrate, fat breakdown in food. And I agree with Carol that actually, as an adult, you should know, really. And I just wish that we could allow people to have one little break from calorie counting when they go out to a restaurant.
So I think it's really important for people to have information, and actually all this does is give you information. I'm really excited about it because actually if I go to a supermarket, I will know the sort of calories I'm eating. If I go to a restaurant, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know that Domino's pizza was 1,900. I'll go nowhere near it, but I might have something else. And I think
you'd have a good idea, Miata. Come on.
Literally 1,900 calories, no way, had no idea. And I'm someone that actually counts calories and I have a sense. So for me, it's just about information. And in the end, it is about choice. And there will be people. So if your thing is it's about choice, then actually, even if you see 1,900, you'll eat it and you won't be bothered.
It's not good to be calorie counting. It's not good to have those calories in front of your face the whole time.
Well,
what we do have
it's when you look at a menu.
Nutritional education. We have good food tech in schools. Kids know that you need so many carbohydrates, so much protein, so much fat. They know all this stuff to make the decision.
I've also spoken to a lot of people who suffer from eating disorders who are very concerned about this anorexia and bulimia. Personally, I think it would be nice for it to be a choice. So if someone was really interested, they could ask McDonald's or Domino's to see the calorie information, to see the breakdown of fat, protein and carbohydrates. But sticking it on the menu, it is miserable. And I have to say, I ordered a little takeaway earlier.
Oh, for us?
And
thank you.
Not for you, just for myself. And it was healthy. It was healthy. But honestly, seeing the calories, it did take away the joy, actually. It took away the joy. This is going to back up Miatta's point, though,
It
because
works.
I changed a couple of my choices.
Oh no, Dan, don't let the government implement that and change your decisions
I
for
know.
you. No.
Information and choice.
It's
that's
not
what
going to
it's
be
about.
good for business, is it?
No.
It's going to be good for restaurant business.
It's not, and I think this is the last thing that restaurants and takeaways need at the
But more
moment.
importantly, what did you have and why weren't we invited?
I had Japanese, actually, but I just stayed away from some of the carbier choices. Look, I just feel like when you're going out, you should be able to make sensible choices, and we don't need the nanny state in every aspect of our lives. Also, by the way, this has been the rule in most parts of America for a very, very long time. What happened? Obesity skyrocketed.
Well, exactly. It always the opposite effect, isn't it? You try and do too much for something. People need to educate themselves, if you ask me.
It's not the state's job.
Yeah.
Now, in my eyes, the Queen of Pop can do no wrong, but Madonna has sparked concerns with this admittedly, how would you describe it? Slightly bizarre TikTok video posted before this weekend's Grammys ceremony. Fans were confused by the bulging pouch, sheer outfit and the back and forth rocking exhibited by the 63-year-old in that now deleted clip, and others like it, set to remixes of her brilliant 1998 hit Frozen. I hope she didn't read the comments section, never read the comments, by the way, where she was described as completely unsettling and users asked, is she okay? But here's the thing, the videos still live have a combined total of 24 million views. So that's the power of Madonna. Remember that, TikTok trolls, when your next selfie gets 10 likes. I mean, Carol McGiffin, this does annoy me a bit because anytime Madonna does anything, people want to tear her down. Yeah, it's a bit bizarre. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to follow her. 24 million people are.
Well, I think that everybody likes a freak show, don't they? They're drawn to it. You know, look how many people watch Dr. Pimple Popper. I mean, it's just disgusting.
You don't want to know.
You don't want to know.
You don't want to know, genuinely.
People like that. And, you know, I'm not worried about her. I know that she's very sensible and she's very grown up and she does know what she's doing. But I'm very worried for her looks because when she's controlling photographs, she looks great. But when she's caught off guard, she looks pretty shocking, actually. She's had a lot of work done. Obviously, I'm sure she'll admit to that. I thought it was Pete Burns in that video. I honestly did.
Carol, she's the queen of reinvention, Miatta.
I know, but it doesn't do her any favours when she's going like that.
But if she wants to, who cares?
I don't care, but it's you're showing it to me and you're telling me I've got to. I mean, I didn't want to look at it, actually. I've not seen it,
I
to
think
be
Marilyn
honest.
Manson looks great for his age.
Oh, Calvin. Miatta, come on. Please tell me I've got one Madonna supporter here with me.
So I'm a big fan of Madonna. I think she can do what she likes. I think it's a shame that she's had so much work done because I think she's stunning and she probably didn't need to. And
work. What are you guys talking about? This is all natural.
You need the counterfactual to know how she would have looked if she hadn't had the work done.
I'd love to see what she would have looked like
Yeah, but
at
we don't have
her
the
age.
counterfactual,
Because
so
she's
we can't
what,
say that.
64 or something? She's 64?
Do you know what? I just think for someone who has had that much scrutiny about the way they look for such a long time, it's probably not surprising that she's very conscious of her image. But I think you're right, Carol. She knows what she's doing. This is part of a wider strategy. She's introducing herself to a young market and she doesn't give a damn what any of the trolls think. That is a good thing.
No.
Carol McGiffin, Calvin Robinson, Miatta Fambula, do stand by because coming up, it is the crowning moment of the show. My superstar panel will nominate for today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Will Miatta get a win for her first time out? We shall see at 10:50. But next has the war on truth in Ukraine spotlighted attempts to silence free speech in the West. Journalist and author Mick Hume is uncancelled in just a few seconds' time. Right after we take a look at what's coming up on tomorrow's show. Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, after a damning Ofsted report reveals the shocking impact of lockdown on our children's development, who needs to be held accountable and how do we get our young back on track? Steve Chalk, founder of the Oasis Multi-Academy Trust, gives evidence to my lockdown inquiry. Plus, star US journalist Megyn Kelly, political firebrand Anne Widdecombe and columnist extraordinaire Rod Little give their unfiltered takes on the issues that matter to you. and I'll break down the headlines of the day with my superstar panel. Top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel, activist and entrepreneur Adam Brooks, and royal and political commentator Daisy McAndrew. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. As the conflict continues to rage in Ukraine, has the West's response hinted we're in danger of losing the woke war on free speech? Blanket censorship in authoritarian countries like Russia is nothing new, but our retaliation to the invasion of Ukraine has brought the battle with cancel culture into sharp focus as authorities try to ensure a conformist line is towed. Ofcom revoked Russia broadcaster RT's licence. The government threatened to crack down on academics questioning the mainstream narrative. And Big Tech's Truth Police relaxed rules for people living near Ukraine who wanted to wish death on the Russian invaders. Author Mick Hume joins me now. Mick, great to have you here. Are we relinquishing the moral high ground and playing into Putin's hands somewhat by shutting down our right to freedom of expression around the war?
Good evening, Dan. Yes, there's a definite danger there. You know, we all know that truth is the first casualty of war, and that usually means that free speech is pretty close behind it in the casualty list, because all sides in a conflict try and suppress what the other side's saying and get across their version of events. So as you say, we have blanket naked state censorship in Russia under Putin. We have the Ukrainian government imposing a uniform view on all of its TV channels and banning political parties from talking if they're seen as being at all sympathetic to Russia. But we're not facing that kind of Orwellian situation. But nevertheless, as you indicate, we are looking at a situation where, through various measures, governments and big tech are trying to make sure there's a conformist view of the war. And I think it does risk us surrendering the high ground to Putin. There are both practical and principled reasons why we should be standing for free speech, even in the middle of a war. In fact, particularly in the middle of a crisis like this. Practically, I think it is a great gift to Putin for us to start censoring RT or any other Russian outlet. It allows him to take the moral high ground and to say, well, there you are, I was right. Behind the facade of Western democracy, they're all fascists, really. And it's practically important because, first of all, in Britain, there's no traction for Russian propaganda. Nobody's interested in what Putin says. And so it doesn't do any good banning it here. But around the world, there are a great number of people who, contrary to the impression we're sometimes given, don't just believe whatever the BBC World Service says. You know, there are any number of countries that did not support the UN motion condemning Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. A lot of people around the world who don't trust the West.
Well, exactly, and we need to understand why they think that way, don't we, Mick? And that's why, personally, I was opposed to RT being removed from British airwaves, because, personally, I actually found it quite helpful to know what crazy information was being fed to the Russian people. I viewed it almost as an education.
Exactly. It's a very useful source of information from that point of view. To see the world through the Putin regime's eyes and see what they are saying to their people is a very important weapon for us. And also, as I say, we've got to win the argument against that with the world and not be assuming that if we ban it, that's basically saying not in front of the children, don't allow people to see this. Well, that's never a convincing argument. Censorship is always a gift to whoever you censor because it allows them to play the martyr.
Mick, I was also very concerned, you raise it there, with what Zelenskyy did in terms of the media and opposition parties. But how do you respond when folks say, look, that's what happens during wartime and it's always happened during wartime looking through history?
Well, that's really true, Jan. I mean, every government of any stripe, not only, Hitler and Stalin, or Putin, but any government of any stripe, right from the Paris Communards through elected American governments through every conflict of the last 200 years, have always attempted to control information behind their lines in a life and death struggle. That's completely understandable. Nevertheless, it's still a shame that he felt necessary to do that, because it does undermine his stance as being the pro-democracy, pro-freedom fighter. And even in the middle of a world war, in Britain in World War II, let's remember we're not in the middle of a war, but we are in the middle of a culture war for our own freedom of speech. That's why it's important we take a stand on this. But even in the middle of a world war in Britain, there were people like a 28-year-old Michael Foot, who led a campaign against the Labour Home Secretary Herbert Morrison's threats to ban the Daily Mirror for criticising the brass button knobs who were running the British Army in 1942. And Michael Foot said, if we're going to have liberties in this country, we've got to fight for them, fight for them, fight for them again. That's an absolute lesson that we should take to heart 80 years later. So the fact that we're in the middle of a crisis means that these principles are more important to stand for, not less. They're not luxuries. You can say, oh yeah, free speech is okay in peacetime and everything's going well. It's now when we're having a proper debate about what does our society stand for? What is Britain as a country prepared to stand and fight for? What values do we think are worth championing? This is the moment when open discussion, free debate and argument is more important than ever. That's why I think censorship is always a gift to the enemy.
Meg, how do you think the British media have performed throughout this war? And do you understand why there is so much scepticism from some folk towards the mainstream media, given how they feel they were lied to over the COVID crisis the preceding 2 years?
Yeah, well, I think those are two separate and connected things then, aren't there? There is a kind of bank of mistrust of media and government narratives, which is built up powerfully in a section of the population over the last couple of years. And in fact, before that, going back, many people like myself, Brexiteers, thoroughly mistrusted everything that the media told us about the debate about EU membership and Brexit since 2016. So there is that, and that's a very difficult issue to deal with, to restore trust in government and media institutions. But there's also sorry, go.
No, you go on.
So there's that. There's also the question of the performance of the British media, and I think there's been some absolutely heroic and very brave, courageous journalism taking place. There's also been, on the other hand, a very conformist view where everything is just repeated basically along one line. Very few serious questions being asked about what's actually happening on the ground in the war zones. And a lot of it, what I would call emotionalism. There's a lot of journalists who are concerned about telling us how they feel about the war and how upset they are. And I'm not doubting the authenticity of their feelings, but feelings and fear and horror doesn't explain to you the context in which wars happen. What is this conflict about? What's the cause of it and what's the consequence of it likely to be? Just showing us continually the pain and suffering of the people is not an answer to that. And the feelings of the journalist reporting it is not an explanation or an answer to that problem. So we need a bit more context and analysis, I think, and a bit less the journalism, emotionalism of just pouring it out. I would personally like to see a bit more emphasis in the British media coverage of not just of the suffering of the Ukrainian people, but of the heroism of the Ukrainian people. They've been standing up to these foreign aggressors with remarkable guts, and by all accounts, winning some significant victories. And I would like to see far more emphasis put on the heroism of the Ukrainian people, them as being the kind of authors of their own destiny, rather than this continual emphasis on them as just weeping and suffering victims.
Very good advice. Mick Hume, absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union Jackass. My superstar panel return now. Carol McGiffin, who are you nominating as your greatest Briton today?
Well, it's got to be not Britain, obviously, but Elon Musk, because yes. I hope that he does restore some kind of sanity to Twitter.
Is he the man to do it, Carol?
Well, if anyone can, he can. And he believes in freedom of speech. So, yeah, and he owns a great stake. Hopefully he'll own more and he'll start, upsetting or putting the cat amongst the pigeons. I was going to say letting hit the fan, but I didn't.
No, very good point. Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
Mine is Nadine Dorries, of axing Channel 4, and hopefully she'll do the same thing with the BBC. These metropolitan liberal elites cannot preach to us, they cannot tell us we are living our lives wrong and not expect any consequences for that.
Mm-hmm. And she must stare down this Tory rebellion, right?
Yes, stare down the wets. They should vote in line with their party for once.
Miata, your Greatest Britain nominee.
So I've gone for June Brown. I think absolutely iconic art person, has fantastic actress and just shaped the cultural scene and did so much more beyond the day job. And I just think just a great example of a fantastic person that we all loved and will all remember. And
yeah, I described her yesterday as a soap goat. And loads of people are like, what do you mean, Dan? Goat. Apparently that's a young person's term. I only learned about it recently. Greatest of all time. But she was my Greatest Britain yesterday. I'm sorry, Miata, June Brown. So I'm going to go with Calvin Robinson here and Nadine Dorries. Nadine has to stand firm. She has to sell Channel 4. She has to ignore the liberal elite who are going to do everything in their power to force a reversal. Greatest Britain... Union Jackass time now. Carol McGiffin, your nominee.
Well, they could get it every night, as far as I'm concerned, and that's the Extinction Rebellion lot.
Oh, yes.
Oh, God. I mean, they're just so tiresome, aren't they?
What have they done this week, Carol, that's got you goat?
Holding up oil, or trying to actually stop people from using oil. They're trying to stop oil development. They're trying to stop oil production. I mean, what do they think is going to happen if we just cancel oil tomorrow? I don't know. I don't think they think. They just...
No.
Well, they're brainwashed, aren't they? Don't you feel a bit sorry for them, Carol, when you see them?
No, of course I don't feel sorry for them. What's the matter with you? Turning into a liberal, Dan. No, I don't feel sorry for them at all. I don't even... Somehow I don't even believe that they 100% believe in their cause. They're agitators, yeah. They're annoying, they know it's not going to go anywhere, they just want to disrupt. They're disruptors. They need, I don't know, something needs to be done about them.
Calvin Robinson, your Union Jackass nominee.
Twitter, specifically for the way they've treated J.K. Rowling. They've got
so what's happened here, Calvin? Explain.
So she's received death threats, she's reported these death threats, Twitter said, oh, sorry, these don't break the guidelines. But when J.K. Rowling tweets, women are women, she gets suspended, she gets banned. So their priorities are upside down, in my opinion. They should either support free speech and let people say anything, or they should clamp down on people that are issuing death threats, the real negative things, rather than people who are preaching the truth. And I'm with Carol on this. I hope that Elon Musk really changes things around and makes this platform promote free speech rather than stifling it and rather than being a left-wing, another metropolitan liberally biased operation.
And Miata Fanbula, your Union Jackass nominee.
So you're all going to love this. Mine is Kwasi Kwarteng, the business secretary, who, to be fair, I think has been really pretty good on energy policy, pretty good on net zero.
Why is he your Union Jackass?
The decision to review fracking, I think, is pandering to his backbenchers because it's very clear that fracking is not the solution to our problem now.
Miata, we have to frack.
It's the best solution we have.
I've been saying it for weeks.
My goodness.
It literally won't generate any energy for 15 years.
So let's get started now.
It's much better. But
we should have been doing it for the past 15 years, Miata, and we wouldn't be in this crisis.
Would generate energy in 2 years.
Wind power is inefficient and expensive.
No, it's not. It's actually
it's very inefficient and very expensive.
Cheaper technology. So if you want to solve the problems, there are other things.
Well, Miata, I'm afraid to say I'm going to the other end of the spectrum. And the Extinction Rebellion are tonight's Union Jackass. I say Kwasi Kwarteng has just done something very good. Yes. But Miata, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show for the first time.
Days.
Thank you to Calvin Robinson too, and Carol McGiffin. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Headliners is next. Good night.
Good evening. Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Strengthening winds will bring a colder feel for most tomorrow. There'll be some sunshine, but most places we'll see a few showers during the day too. Here's the bigger picture. Weather system moving in. Tucked in here, we've had some pretty mild air for most, but northern Scotland's been poking out into the colder air, and that's why we've seen some heavy snowfall across the far north, easing off over the next couple of hours, turning to rain and a wet and windy night across Orkney. Otherwise, it'll be rain showers moving in, some clear spells, temperatures not falling too far, certainly for most places. But as the rain clears from northern Scotland, well, we could see things turning a little icy here as temperatures drop down close to freezing. On to the details for Wednesday. It stays wet and windy in Orkney. Elsewhere, it'll be a breezy day with that breeze throwing showers across all areas. Plenty of them in the west. Even further east, though, I think we'll see showers developing as we go through the day. There will be sunny spells between the showers. It won't rain all day, far from it, and when the sun's out, we could still get up into the mid-teens, but with a strengthening wind, it will feel a bit cooler than today for sure. And the wind's getting lively on Wednesday night across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, and then picking up everywhere as we head into Thursday. A bitter wind developing too. There are chance of some more persistent rain across southernmost counties during Wednesday night and into Thursday. And further north, the showers turning more and more wintry as temperatures again fall down close to freezing. So again, the potential for things to be a little icy. On to Thursday then, and the wet weather in the south. As I say, some uncertainty about how much we see on Thursday morning, but it should clear away, and then generally sunny spells. Further north, more showers, turning more wintry, snow on hills, sleet, hail at low levels, and temperatures only in single figures for the vast majority. When you add on that wind, it really will feel bitter during Thursday afternoon. Goodbye.
Europe is in